World hunger. How are you going to stop it? Solve it. Okay, 10 seconds. Okay. Anyway, sorry I'm late. Last night, I think when we were on the panel, I said I had a meeting with the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs for South Sudan. So last night we had the meeting, went well. By the way, there's a lot of security out here today, just so everyone knows, especially by the UN for some reason. But so as I'm heading back to the room, I get a text message that the Vice President wants to see me this morning at 9. So I said, well, you know, like, okay, but I do have to speak here. Okay, so I said, so I met him. And what we were discussing, because a month ago I spoke to the ambassador, and we were talking about South Sudan as a whole. A lot of problems. We were talking about roads, because if you look at South Sudan, they have a rainy season that can run 7 months. 60% of the country is shut down for 7 months. Think about what it's like to try and get around, just you in your own city, county, state, if for 7 months, 60% of it is shut down. No roads, mud, you can't get through it. Well, the reason why he wanted to talk to me is because a couple of geology professors, Dr. Putman and Dr. Bird, years ago, had invented this technology that solidifies soil. And what they invented it for was for landfills, to treat the soil under landfills so that, because you know, when it rains, landfills can, all that nasty stuff can leak into the aquifers and pollute. And to encase nuclear waste. So, okay, that's two good things. So after we took it over in 2011, I said, well, what about roads? Can you use this for roads? They said, well, we don't know. Well, let's test it out. So we tested on a military base 3 years ago. Within 24 hours, they were driving tanks, jeeps, 18-wheelers on it. Hey, this is pretty good. These are 3 or 4 chemicals, 3 of which are found in food. Very inexpensive, clean technology. So the engineers from this base, they were going out every day trying to figure out how this is working. But it works. And you know, I don't have a degree in that. You know, mine's in business. So I said to him, I said, I would ask these professors, so how does it work like that? And they look at you like you're crazy and say, well, it's dirt science. Of course it works. Okay, so I'm like, okay, I got it. So how about this? How about, so it can solidify soil. That's great. What about other things? Sinkholes. So we go to Florida, talk to a sinkhole president. So I showed him the technology. He says, this will work. We can mix it with masonry sand, put it in the hole. And oh, and by the way, here's the other thing. When it rains on it, whether it's a road or anything else, if it rains on it, it makes it harder. That's the thing. It makes it harder. That's a game changer. That's when everybody stands up and listens and go, what? What do you mean it makes it harder? I know. And it has rehealing properties in it. Rain makes it harder. Now, who's ever heard of that? Okay? So now we said, well, maybe there's a few more uses. Now we've come up with like 35 uses for it. We're going to be building contamination platforms for water for South Sudan. They drill wells. Well, these wells can become contaminated. So we can treat around it so that it doesn't contaminate the water. Pipelines. There are 20,000 reported oil leaks, pipeline leaks, just in the United States. We can treat under the pipelines so that when it does leak, it doesn't go down. It stays up to the top and it's easier to clean. I mean, this is great stuff. And this is, these professors, I mean, they're the ones that invented it. So the ambassador today, or the vice president said, he was challenging me. He says, look, People talk all the time about doing stuff for South Sudan, you know? And I know what he means. People run there and they look there and they see how bad it is, and they run away. They don't come back. And I looked at him and I said, I'm not them. I said, we're committed to this. I said, this is a challenge. I like those challenges. What I wanted to tell him was, look, I took my 4- and 6-year-old to Toys R Us in Times Square on Black Friday. Okay? You know, people thought I was crazy. And then I took them to Macy's to see Santa Claus on the same day. Okay? Now, you tell me, all right? So I don't think he would have understood all of that, but hey. So, Fukushima. The disaster of Fukushima. In 2011, there was a nuclear reactor meltdown. It's been leaking since 2011. They've tried everything. And they even tried to freeze it. I was talking to Dr. Putnam, he says it's not going to work. The only thing that can work is this, and we honestly believe that this will work. We can actually inject this into the ground as a liquid, solidify underneath it, and solidify the soil and stop it. But the bureaucracy is so frustrating to get things done. And that's why, you know, there are 451 nuclear reactors in the world. Over 300 of them are with the United Nations countries. We want to partner with them to say, listen, let's work together, solidify these things, so if it happens, okay, it can stop it. Pipelines. I mean, there's been people protesting the building of pipelines in this country for good reason. It destroys things. So yes, Keystone Pipeline, yes. You need to talk to us about treating under there and under the pipelines, okay, very inexpensively, so that when it does leak, and they will leak, so it doesn't create a disaster for people. So, and a lot of this has to do with leadership. You know, my dissertation was on Katrina, and I was looking at the 5 leaders who were mostly in charge during that time. The president, Homeland Security, the mayor, FEMA director, and I was looking at what they did and what they failed to do. And when all was said and done, and the US government put out this big, research study about what happened, and the name of it was a failure of initiative, a failure of leadership. You can trace any failure, I guarantee you, to leadership. I guarantee you. People know that things are going to happen, and they still won't do anything. Rarely are people proactive. They're reactive. Oh, somebody got hurt. Well, we need to do something about it. They wait till after. I'm trying to prevent these things from happening. Let me give you a couple examples of really good leadership. In the Netherlands, in 1953, there was a flood. Okay, killed over 2,000 people. You know what they did? They created a hydraulic system, and it never happened again, ever. They invested the money, and they've been upgrading ever since, and it's never happened again. In 1976, there was an earthquake in China. I think it was northern China. It encompassed like 421 counties. It killed 246,000 people, except for in one county, who had training, education, they were ready, they had regular exercises. From the top down, all the citizens were involved in it. Not one casualty. This was in 1976. So I'm a big believer in strategic alliances and partnerships. That's the only way you can do big projects. I'm one of the corporate people for corporate leadership faculty for Points of Light. Great organization. 4 million volunteers in 29 countries. And we talked about, when people say something to me like, well, in South Sudan, these villages, we need to be able to, there's 3,000 or 4,000 people in there, okay, or, well, how many are displaced? Well, there's something like 40,000. I said, well, then why don't we create a village for 40,000? Why are we planning for 2,000 or 3,000? See, that makes no sense to me. It makes no sense. But again, it's leadership. The NASA, for example. NASA sent people to the moon. All this space stuff that's been going on. And not once did NASA say, hey, what if we could reuse these rockets? Oh, until SpaceX came along and said, let's reuse them. Let's see if we can do that and bring them back. And guess what? They did. All right, so we were talking to, all of a sudden I had a meeting. It was a meeting with one of the largest, what were they, the wind power companies in the world. They wanted to see me. They wanted to talk to us about this technology. Okay. I didn't know why. Wind. Okay. They said, well, here's the problem. We put wind farms around the world. We're in like 70 countries. The problem is no roads. And the other problem is, he says, that we have maintenance contracts with these governments. And if we can't, and if you guys have seen how large these turbines are, and if you have to maintain them or replace them, okay. So he said, so I said, what you're saying is you need roads, sustainable roads. He goes, yes, there's nothing out there. We can't use concrete. We can't use asphalt. And you're not going to put asphalt or concrete in the middle of the desert. So this is what we talked to South Sudan about. They have the 4th largest oil reserves in Africa. They have all these natural resources, all this agriculture, but they can't do anything. Turkmenistan told us the same thing. They said they haven't figured out the road problem. I said, well, we have a solution for the road problem, but you got to get moving. I mean, there's logistics involved and things like that. People think, okay, well, you have something now, you have an invention, but it takes more than that. You have to do the planning, the execution, you have to bring in partners to get it done. So the bottom line, and I think I'm at 9 minutes and 47 seconds. I don't know, you yanked out. Okay, yeah, see, I'm good. Okay, so the bottom line is any problem can be solved if you are willing to partner with reach out and partner with other people, other organizations, and honestly have the will to take on the toughest challenges. And that's what the vice president was looking at me like. He was looking at like, why out of all the places in the world, because Finland is ranked 1 as the most stable country in the world. South Sudan, dead last. And he said, why would you want to do that? Because I said, you need it. You need it. Do I have to? I mean, that's it. I mean, you have people suffering out there. And one last thing. There was a guy who wanted to talk to me, PhD, wanted to talk to me about working for the company. And I said, okay, we'll talk. I'll give you a call on Saturday. He said, well, I don't take calls on the weekend. Never called him. Never called him. Needless to say, he's not working for us. Because there are people dying every day. I was in the military for 25 years. Soldiers work every day. So you're going to tell me you can't take a call from me, and I know there's people around the world dying every day because they're drinking dirty water and all that, and you tell me you can't take a call. You don't need to be part of my organization. Okay, thank you very much.